Welcome to Talking Tuesday. I am your host, Fancy Quant, and today we are going to talk about where I am headed. So if you have not been following my career here on YouTube or the podcast itself, I left the banking industry back in February here of 2022. I have been part of the Great Resignation, and I've been really sitting and thinking, where do I want to go next, right? I've been head down, just grinding it out, trying to really climb the corporate ladder here, trying to make big impacts and changes in the industry of risk management and quantitative finance. And yet now I've kind of left with an explosion here. And I've been thinking, where do I want to go? Do I want to go into tech? Do I want to go into FinTech? Do I want to stay in banking? That has been the big question. And today I'm going to release the answer to this because I have finally made a decision. So the decision is I am going to be going into FinTech. And so I want to talk a little bit about the decision itself. I want to talk a little bit about why I'm doing what I'm doing so you guys can kind of get an idea of my thought process. So hopefully if you're in a similar situation career-wise where it's like you've gone through your career so far and then all of a sudden it's like you start asking the question, am I even supposed to be in this career? Do I want to do something different? Or for many of you that are younger, that are students, if you're at the beginning of your career thinking about, okay, which path do I want to take? And do I even want to be in some of these industries because of different reasons? Or maybe I should do, similar to myself, take one path for a while and then realize you have an opportunity to switch to another path. So without further ado, let me just talk a little bit about why I did not go into tech to start with here. So I really have something, I guess, inside of me that really likes tech. There's something exciting about it. I grew up in the 90s, so when I was growing up, I had friends that their parents worked as engineers, or I had friends that their parents worked in some sort of the tech industry, or they're like programming for like web design before, all these template designers were out there and they built websites for like massive corporations. And so I always had a piece of me that always felt like it was kind of tied into tech. I enjoyed learning to code when I taught myself to code before it was, like the big, important, exciting thing that everybody was doing these days. And so for me, it's like, I really want to be a part of the solution. I really want to see something unique. I really want to solve problems. I think tech has a lot of amazing potential. But I think with tech's potential, there's a lot of downsides, a lot of negativity within the industry itself, where I don't really want to join it per se, but I'm trying to find the right company. And I think this is a good point for many of you. Tech as a whole, I think, is an awesome career. There's great compensation. I think a lot of the original companies here, so even like the big FAANG companies and like Microsoft and, Apple and Oracle and even some other firms out there, some of these big tech firms, I think they've done an amazing job at trying to make this a very meritocratic system, more on a capitalist kind of design here, where it's like those that work the hardest get paid the most. It doesn't matter if you're, an individual contributor or a manager. We really care about making some sort of great technology to really help the consumer. And whoever's going to do that the best is going to get paid the most because they're adding the most value. And so for this, I really enjoy this. I really thrive. I really want to work in tech. And that's kind of been the big draw for me. Now, of course, some of the firms that have come after me over the years, and specifically the one that wanted me to interview recently, in the last, 6 months or so, I have some ethical concerns around the way tech's being used, the way data is being monitored. I released a video discussing privacy issues, which of course didn't perform well. But these are the big things that kind of worry me, is the ethical stance of what you are doing and how it impacts society as a whole. And so for that reason, I was like a little hesitant to talk to this firm and to take the offer here. I knew the compensation would have been, competitive. And the other kind of downside for me was that they wanted me to do a coding interview in Python. And I have no problem with that. Like, it's not like, okay, that will make or break me. It's just, I haven't programmed in Python in a little bit because banking and quant finance on the banking side specifically, we are predominantly a SaaS industry. Okay. Now there are some big banks that are moving towards Python. In my career, I've used SAS, Python, and R, and a little bit of, they've dabbled with MATLAB, but we've never used it as an actual language. And of course, use other tools like SQL and everything else. But SAS is my main language. This is what we do everything in. Why? Because it's far more efficient than Python or R. I can write SAS significantly faster. it generates the tables that we need. And I know people go, oh, but it's really expensive and it's not good and it's not this and it's super slow. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, it's actually competitive with the other ones for statistical analysis. You know what you're not going to use SAS for? You're not going to use SAS to do automation of like email processes, or you're not going to use it to build out systems for other tools, right? That's not what SAS is designed for. It's designed for doing statistical analysis, and it does a stellar job at it, and I stand by that. It doesn't mean that, it's the best language out there, but it does really well for what banks need it to do, and they offer a lot of other tools like inventory management that comes baked into this whole package. So I've done SAS a lot. Now I've validated models in Python and in R, and I've done statistical models and machine learning models in both of those languages. But the thing is, I don't do it every day, and I haven't even been programming like daily like I was doing in my day job so I've been off since February. The job before that, we barely did any programming because I was like basically in a director role, and it was hard to get hands-on coding experience, and then I do a lot of onboarding and all that. And then before that, I was a little bit slow at my last job. And so we were actually kind of in a downtime. So we have really, really busy seasons and really, really slow seasons. But we were basically in a slower season. I hadn't really been programming too much, as well as I was an associate director at that position. And so I was running projects and trying to do the majority of the work myself without bringing on a bunch of employees. But I wasn't really doing that much coding like I had been doing in the past. So, right, I had programming in SAS, I had some R, I had some Python, but I'm not fluent in Python at that point of like, I'm going to dive in and do this, coding interview for one of these FAANG companies and just dive in head first and be an ML engineer. I have to sit and prep for it for at least like a month or two just to get back up and running and kind of get back into problem solving mode with code and all that. So for me, that was a huge downside. Like I didn't want to spend a month or two going through the interview process just to prepare for it, then to go through the entire process here, then, to hopefully get an offer. And then if you get an offer, then to sit and look at it and say, okay, I have this offer, but I have other offers. Like, it's just a bunch of investment up front. And so it's like, I thought about it. It's always another opportunity for the future, right? I'm not shutting it down. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying tech's a bad industry. I'm just saying for now, it's just too much effort for what I want to put into this. And this really comes down to the fact that I already have another offer on the table from the FinTech company I've been working with. They already wanted to get numbers put down. They were really excited to have me. And so this is kind of part of the motivation of, I think tech's great. I think I might end up in tech in the long run. I don't know, but we will see. It depends how much value I can add to the industry itself and, a bunch of other factors that go into that. And only time will tell. So tech, just a bunch of extra work, some ethical concerns from the firm that would have been doing the hiring specifically here. Again, I didn't apply anywhere. Like the tech firm reached out to me. I had 2 or 3 FinTech firms reach out, and then I had a bank reach out. So tech, just a lot of prep work, a lot of ethical concerns with that company. Things I think I could make work and if I really needed that job, but I don't really need the job and I don't really want to put in a bunch of extra effort. So I did not go the tech route. Now let's talk about banking here. So the banking thing was a little bit of a weird situation. I had a contact that I've known for a little bit of time now, and they reached out and said, okay, if you're looking for a job, let me know. We want to come to Dallas. Our firm does. We want to build out a quant team in Dallas. And, it's hard to get managing directors to move to Dallas because they're all located where the headquarters is at on the East Coast. And so, you'd just be a perfect fit. Like you already work in the space. You already do what we do every day. We have, these different teams, and they explained all the different teams they had and went through the process. And like, we're really excited. It'd be awesome just to have you talk to my team to see if you'd be a good fit. And I said, yeah. Like I'm more than interested in this. Sounds awesome. And I was really leaning towards actually just staying in banking because it's really familiar to me. Again, they'd be using more Python than SAS. So they're kind of moving as a industry leader towards the banking side and like trying to be a little more advanced for a bank. And they've done a bunch of research and interesting projects. And so I thought this will be a really good fit here. It'll be a little bit of just like a refreshment of like, we're doing something new. There are people that are research focused. But it has that familiarity to me that it's like, I can, dive on in. I know the regulatory background. I know the expectations of the job. I know what we're doing. Like I got all this figured. I've been doing this now for 8 years. I've got it dialed in. This will be super easy, but it'll have kind of a fun new twist to it. They sound to be a little bit more focused on the research side, which is kind of part of my critique with the banking side. They really want to do some automation. They wanted to make things a little bit, more efficient and better and really focus on the process and managing risk in itself, not just doing it for a regulatory purpose. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm excited. And then their HR staff called me and they set up this call. And I talked to the lady for a short period. One, she was fairly late to the call, which kind of bugged me, but I was like, it's no big deal. And then on top of that, I was trying to explain what I did, and I'm going through, okay, I was the director of risk at, this other firm, and it didn't go well, and this is why I left. And then I worked at this other firm for 6 years, and I did this, and I'm explaining the whole process. And then she goes, okay, so you are going to model governance here. And I'm like, no. I'm a model validator. Like I build statistical models for challenger models and explain I built all these stats models for these different usages. I've worked in auto, I've done mortgage, I've done PP&R and CCAR modeling. So I've done all these things. I've done CECL, I've done IFRS 9, for example. And so I've done different models for regulatory purposes. I've done different models for actual business usages. So like pricing models, I've worked on those validations with those in originations. And I'm starting to go through this in my head, like talking to her saying, I've done all this. And she goes, yeah, I get that. But you have a governance. It says here that you worked with governance and what. I said, yeah, I did validation and governance. I was the director. I was over the people that sat underneath of me was a validation team and a governance team. And she just couldn't understand this. And I explained to her, I'm basically like the head of validation. I was not the head of validation. There was an actual head of validation above me. So you have the head of validation, then you had me, and then under me, you had 2 separate teams. And she couldn't understand this. And so she goes, oh, okay, yeah, I understand now. So okay, that's fine. So I chatted with her a little bit more, and she's like, what do you really enjoy doing? I'm like, oh, I love time series research. I've really been getting into machine learning and explaining the models that we've been using at one of my past jobs doing machine learning within credit. And I'm going through this, and it's like, my experience and background isn't like the typical risk quant. Like I haven't covered, I've just done credit. Like I've done credit, I've done ops, operational risk. I've done PP&R, which is pre-provisional net revenue, which is for CCAR modeling and budgeting and forecasting. And the only thing I really haven't technically touched is market, but if you want to count pricings and originations in the auto space as market, which some do, then I've covered market. So I've covered all the big 4. I have a financial engineering specialist kind of background, which is the focus of my master's in applied economics. I've done econometrics modeling. I've done a wide range of things, but I really want to do machine learning research, specifically for time series applications. That's really where I want to end up. That's what I want to do. So I explained this to the HR lady. She said, okay, great. Let me get you another interview with this other colleague. She's one of, I think, the directors or managing directors, and she'll talk to you. And I think her team would be a perfect fit for you. So, okay, great. So I wait a week or so. We get this interview set up. And then I talk to this lady, and she's explaining to me what she does. And I go, wait, so you don't do actual modeling? And she goes, no. I do models, but I do qualitative models. And I'm like, just rubbing my head so the first lady in HR has no clue what quants are, it sounds like. It sounds like she has a very cookie cutter idea and she can't mentally grasp and understand quantitative finance. And so this is a huge turnoff to me because, as many of you know, I cover a wide range of quant finance and topics and everything and teaching. And I've been in banking for so long, I know all these different areas. And as soon as you say qualitative models, that's basically models that aren't real models. They're decisions based on well, the business has this sort of logic, so therefore, if this, then that. It's really, really simplified, computer science 101. So this lady's going on, and she goes, well, they told me to talk to you. I have no idea also, why am I talking to you? Can you explain this to me? And everyone I talked to at the bank, for some reason, couldn't comprehend why they were talking to me. And so that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's okay. And then the HR lady too at the beginning told me there was no job openings. We don't have any openings. So I'm then why are okay. I get we're talking because we're trying to build a relationship. And then if you have an opportunity, you'll let me know. But when I talked to my contact, it sounded like his team, because he's the head of the entire department, they were actually going to do some hiring and they were going to, do some planning and need to get some OKs and everything. But this was like a plan. Like they were working on this plan to see if it would turn out or not. Now I'm talking to every individual on the line and it's like, nobody knows what's going on. There's no communication. So I'm like, this is a real big red flag for me, because the last firm, there was a lot of issues with communication in the sense they didn't fully comprehend and understand what I was attempting to do, nor when they told me what I was hired for, when I did that, then they were upset. So now I'm looking at this new bank saying, well, you've got a full-blown team. You even have an HR person that's supposed to be just for your team. And now she doesn't understand quant finance. She can't even look at a resume and figure it out. And they didn't even ask me for the resume until during the meeting. So I'm just like, the bank doesn't want me, right? They're not bending over backwards saying, we need these skills that you have and listing out. Dimitri, I need this, and this. We don't have this skill. We really need someone to fill this. Like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to just toe the line with the bank. And so when I left, actually, one of the interviews, in-person interview with the FinTech firm, I was kind of shell-shocked with just, it's so different. FinTech is so different than traditional banking, which is fine. But I came back thinking, like, I really need structure. I really need, this design to be able to work and fluently. And that's what banking has. It has this structure. And in my mind, I'm comparing the structure of banking to tech, where tech has basically no structure. Banking has 100% structure. And I'm looking for something, I think, somewhat in the middle. FinTech might offer this. I don't know. So I'm trying to figure this out. And so when I got home, I was thinking about it. I was like, I just don't know. The FinTech offer sounds great. I really like what they're doing. I like the people, but I'm not sure how the structure piece is going to figure out. So I'm still trying to, grapple with this, right? One full day of interviewing or half day of interviewing here. It's just not enough to really get an idea of this. So I was like, I need to meet with more people at the firm. I really need to understand this. But that night or the next morning, I emailed my friend at the bank and said, I really need a job with some great structure, and I'm not sure if FinTech's going to be the option or not. I'm still thinking about these sorts of things. So I'd love to interview with you guys. And that was before I interviewed with this bank. And then now that I'm going through this, I'm starting to have these horror flashbacks of the banking industry where it's like, there's this weird crappy hierarchy in banking where it's not based on education and merit. It's not based on performance. So on one side, tech is very based on performance. Banking used to be that way, but it's kind of deteriorated over the years. And there's unfortunately a lot of this, somebody, or it's like we already have people in different positions. And so even though you're an all-star and we really want you on the team, maybe we can shuffle you into this lower position and, maybe we could bring you in, maybe we can't bring you in. And then like the HR lady is like, well, what are you expecting for salary? Well, maybe I could put you at this title. I'm not looking for these games. Like, I'm not looking at your hierarchy sheet and thinking, well, I might do X, Y, and Z, and I might beg and grovel, to get into that. Like, I'm not into this, right? Because I've got people coming to me from different firms asking to hire me, really wanting my skills. Like the tech firm really wanted me to interview, and they've been coming after me for over a year now. So we keep following up with each other. It's really tempting to go to the tech firm. So I have this company that really wants me. I've got the FinTech firm that really wants me. And I had 2 other FinTech firms that reached out afterwards, all saying, we'd love to have you come on and help us. And then I've got the bank now saying, like, we're this big bloated hierarchy. And, we might like you. We might not like you. We don't really need you, but we might need you. And so at that point, that just kind of blew the whole thing up for me. And I thought about reaching out to my contact and saying, hey, I'm really just disappointed in this. There doesn't seem to be a consistent message from your firm that everybody knew what was going on. It just seemed like this real chaotic show of I don't know, it kind of seemed smoke and mirror-ish, where it was like no one really knew what was going on. And I'm hearing all these great stories of, they're really quantitative and there's a lot of research. And the guy I know there is really quantitative and really research driven, and he's the head of the department. So I'm like, okay, this has to be true. But then when I meet with your team doesn't seem to have those sorts of strengths. So anyways, it was a weird thing. I didn't reach out to my contact about it. It is what it is. I think people are who they are. I still like my contact, right? No hard feelings with that. I mean, things just happen. Your team might just not have gotten the communication skills. I don't really know what happened in the whole process, but I don't really care. Like, it's all good, right? They clearly didn't really need me. They're just kind of seeing if maybe they could help me out, which is fine. I appreciate that. But I'm not going somewhere and I'm not going to take a job because, I need a favor. Like, I'm going to go somewhere where they actually physically need me. And that leads me to the FinTech firm. So the FinTech firm, was actually pretty awesome. So I'm pretty excited for a variety of reasons here. I've kind of hinted at it over the years here, but I've been in the point where like the last, I don't even know how long these days, but it's been a while where it's like I was an all-star at this firm and I'm all-star at my first firm, an all-star at the second firm I went to, an all-star at the third firm. And then there reached a peaking point where it was like, well, the third firm, I wasn't an all-star when I started because they didn't know where to put me. And my managing director was a nice guy, but really didn't push for me. Didn't want to take on big projects, which made sense because he was looking to retire. Switched directors. My director did an amazing job, turned into a managing director. We were like the dream team. My colleague that I worked with, that was my manager at the time, so unofficial manager, but I just call him my manager because he ran all the projects. We were just on fire. Like we'd take massive projects, we'd knock them out of the park. We'd do it with 2 people. We do it in, awesome timelines. Sometimes we struggle with the timeline. We start adding more people. And of course, my manager at the time is like, he wants to check every possible stat and every possible scenario. And I'm just loving this because it's like a project that should take like a week. I'm just knocking out in like a day or 2. And I'm like, oh, this is so stressful. I don't know if I can do it. I'm sitting there like pounding out on my keyboard. And like, I'm so excited about this. And like everything we did just turned out so well. And then there was a big shift in sort of the management. There's a shift in the projects. There was a shift in the teams. And it didn't have to do with my performance. It had to do with how everything else around me got structured, which is why structure is such a critical portion for the firm I go to. And so that was kind of the downfall, where it was like we were just in this weird survival lull. And my team was still my team, but I got moved to an associate director, which I really wanted. But then we didn't have the resources we needed to really make things happen when I got bumped up. So I was basically operating associate director. I had a few resources here and there. They wanted to give me more of them. I didn't need a whole staff of people under me because I can do things myself. I'm pretty efficient at coding and writing reports and things. So again, I think we needed another employee, another analyst to come in underneath of me to work with me full time. I think that would have made night and day difference on the performance of the entire team, but as well as myself. We just didn't have it. So those sort of things were kind of like I've kind of been burned out in the last few years, where it's just like, I'm tired. We've been doing the same processes. I'm going through the motions. And then I get into this new bank, which is supposed to be exciting. It's supposed to be cutting edge. They made a lot of promises. They failed to deliver on almost everything. And so I was just disappointed with a lot of it. And then when the ultimatum came of basically like, you basically need to leave because you don't want to do what we're asking you to do. And it's more than happy to leave at that point. I'm out. Like, I'm just done. And I've just been tired of the banking industry as a whole. And the more time I've taken off, I'm starting to sit here scratching my head thinking like, what are these banks doing? Why are we doing the, like when you start in your first job and you grow up in the banking community, right? Which is how most of these people get into this. You just do things to do things. You don't ask questions like, why do we have a governance team? Right? Why can't, the managers just manage the basic inventory and put it into a system? And why can't, we hit deadlines on our own? Why do we need a full team to do that? And why are we doing the regulatory things that we're doing, where a lot of these banks are building regulatory models just for the sake of meeting regulations, and then they're building separate secondary models for the actual running of the business, and yet they can't merge the two and make it a reasonable venture? Like, we're just wasting time and resources. And there's just a lot of things in the system here where it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Why do we have CROs? Another big gripe of mine. The Fed mandated it, which I think is complete nonsense. We're separating finance, which is the profitability side of the business, from the risk side of the business. This makes no sense. Finance is really the trade-off that you get paid, you make a profit for taking a risk. That's the definition of finance in a whole. And yet we're separating these things out. We're starting to do things, and I'm taking time off looking at this. Like, the industry is just, it's broken to smithereens. I can stand on my soapbox here on my Talking Tuesdays. I can go to conferences and I can talk to people. I can be out there talking as much as I want. I can be out there, yelling, screaming, hands in the air. It's not changing anything. I mean, there's slight changes. I'm seeing slight changes here and there, and people are talking about that a little here and there. But realistically, the banks it's just these overly bloated machines that are churning forward. And a lot of times you get some stupid process that someone creates that makes no sense. and it's just a legacy system. And we just churn it through the system. And so this is a big contributing factor to me on the FinTech side, where it's like, okay, I have the banking, finance, knowledge, and we're still going to be doing all that, but we're going to be adding more technology. And really, it's like we're going to be doing more quantity things. Like, we want to automate things. We want to make things efficient. Even if we have regulations and we have a whole list of them and we want to make sure we're ahead of the curve, that's awesome. Let's figure out how to do the best job possible. And let's get true value out of managing our risks. Let's not do it just to meet the quota, right? Just to meet the regulation here. So this is a key driver for me. The structure piece, as I mentioned, so my new boss, my future boss here, he made a statement that, they've been in startup mode because it's a startup for so long. And it's like everything is just like the Wild West, basically, like seat of your pants, where everyone's running around. We just have to get things done to get things done. But he said, now we're coming to that matured startup state where it's like we need to start putting down like rules and policies and procedures and guidelines and guardrails here to keep everybody running the same direction, keep things running smooth. As you scale and get more employees, you need more structure here. And when he said that, it really just rang with me of like, that's been one of the big pieces I couldn't really put my thumb on. Like, I didn't understand why. I knew that I needed structure in banking, but I hadn't thought about like, if there was a little bit of structure where I can help design the structure, we can help work as a team together, that would be amazing. Like, that really seals the deal for me. Everybody I interviewed with too at the FinTech was actually like, they seemed excited to come to work. It wasn't like this daily grind. And there also wasn't this really odd, so I mentioned the hierarchy piece here at the bank. There wasn't this prestige, like nose in the air, nonsensical stuff you get at the banks. And this is even truer, I think, the smaller the bank, which is kind of odd. But people have this like, I am a banker and like, I work for one of the world's largest banks. And it's like a big deal to these people. It's like, I don't care. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you work at, right? Let's get the job. Can you do the job? Can you not do the job? Do you really like what you do? Or are you just like going through the motions? You're like, I want people that are excited. I want to show up to work every day. And I remember going to the job I left and, going every morning and I'm like, okay, I'm jazzed. I'm excited. I'm in the car. I've got the music going. I got like an hour, 15 drive here and thinking, okay, this is this employee. This is what they're working on. This is what the other employee's working on. How can we really add value here and here? And how can we fix this problem? And like, I'm getting really excited because we have problems to solve and I've got an amazing team and I think we can get everything done. And then I get to the office and then it was just like this really depressing, like you're sitting in an office, no one talks. We had team meetings, even when everyone's in the office, we're all on our computers in separate offices. Like, what's the point of coming to the office if I can't interact with you face to face? And so I was having fun, I'd grab coffee or something and chat with one of my employees or colleagues or someone even in a different department and talk to another guy. There's a couple offices down. And we had good conversations. It was great, but it was just so depressing. It was like we couldn't move forward. We couldn't make decisions. We didn't want to really dive in and like get things done. It was the typical banking, like, we're really busy. Trust me, I'm really busy. But no one's really doing anything, and we're all really slowly moving, and I have to have 500 approvals. And your schedule, by the way, is 4 meetings every day. So 4 hours a day out of an 8-hour schedule, you're stuck in meetings. And by the way, out of these 4 meetings, those 4 hours you're in those meetings, they don't really impact you. You have no impact, no decision making. So why am I in these meetings? This is this massive complaint I have with banks. Why are we having meetings to have meetings? Like, you could have a meeting on, I don't know, make something up. Like, are we going to take this type of loan on or are we not going to take this type of loan on? And you'll have like 15 departments there. 14 out of the 15 have no say in the decision. 14 out of the 15 shouldn't even be there. And yet you're wasting 14 employees' time in a stupid meeting that has no value. And so these sorts of things were really just grinding me with the banking industry. I think I might make some videos discussing what needs to change with the banking industry. It's a little easier for me to talk about now that I'm not stuck in the grind. I don't have compliance. So for those that don't know, at a bank, if you present any conference, I know it's kind of odd, your manager and like your manager's manager have to sign off and go through this process, and then your PowerPoint presentation has to be reviewed, which is fine. They want to make sure you're not stealing information, nothing proprietary is being presented or given away. I get it. But for me on YouTube, I disclosed that I had a YouTube channel on what I do for a living. for like years. And yet nobody ever said anything. And then finally, compliance, I think it was compliance and HR, compliance and legal, they had to have this meeting with me at one of the banks where it was like, we need to talk about this. So I'm like, okay, let's go through it. And it's just like they nitpick and go through, well, what is YouTube and how do you make money off this? And you're not giving away proprietary things. You don't talk about colleagues, right? And you don't talk about this. Why don't you just go watch the videos? Like, just do your homework. But you get so much oversight that it's hard to speak out a little bit. And I don't know if it's surprising or not to many of you, but there are people at almost every bank out there that listen to this podcast. There are people out there at almost every bank, at least big banks here, that are listening and watching and taking note. And I'm having people reach out to me like when I left and were like, Dimitri, I completely understand the struggle. Like, I worked at this bank for this many years. I'm a senior person and, it's nonsense, but I don't see any way around this and, whatever. And they're going through like, I'm really proud that you're moving on. And it was nice to see the support. It was nice to see like, I'm not the crazy person. Like, I feel like I'm the crazy person right in this office here, chatting on this podcast to myself on a camera with a microphone and a soundboard over here. And sometimes I have a coffee with me, but I'm just talking to myself in this room. And yet it's nice to know that it's actually reaching all these other banks. It's nice to see that it's having some impact here and there and that people see the problems here. And so I'm hoping, again, they won't be super negative, but just things like if banks change this, and this would make this better. And here is why, right? Things that we should be stepping back as a banking community. I still feel like I'm part of the banking community, but stepping back and saying, this is why we're broken. This is what needs to get fixed. But I don't see that. I see a lot of this, let's go with the flow. We don't want to offend anybody. And a lot of times this has to do with wokeness on the left now, which has just been ridiculous. This has to do with jobs too. Like something we'll be doing and it makes no sense why we're doing it. Let's just get rid of this task. People go, oh, well that, we'd have to get rid of employees then. It's like, so we're just going to pay these people to do a job that doesn't need to get done? Yeah, that's fine. Just leave them. We don't want to rock the boat. It's like, we could keep those people and we could put them on something that they could actually add value on, which would make their lives more meaningful. And yet I talk to people in the industry who are just tired. They're just burned out. They're just going through the motions now. And again, we need to streamline process, add value. A lot of these things aren't happening in the banking side. But back to the FinTech here. Everybody was really excited to be there. The product's really interesting. I'm going to be able to program in Python, which is awesome because that's kind of the prominent language now in a lot of firms. I think banks are going to slowly kind of try it out. But again, this is perfectly prep me for other tech jobs, other FinTech jobs. Like, I just want to get back to like doing the mainstream, doing the analytics, building the models. Everybody too at the FinTech wanted to like discuss something. Like, it wasn't like these weird, boring interviews. Like everyone was like, oh, I heard, like about this model and that model. Do you know about this, that, and the other? And I'm like, oh yeah, let me tell you about it. And I'm like explaining things. And people are actually interested, even though they're not modelers, like they're computer scientists doing the engineering side, the software engineering side. Yeah, they're actually interested in this. So it's fun. It's exciting. I think it's going to be a new opportunity. It's going to really prep me. I think I'm going to be able to really like dig into my bag of skills here and apply a bunch of stuff that I have that I just haven't been able to use at banks, whether it's risk management practices, stats and modeling, those sorts of things here. So my title technically is Vice President of Quantitative Risk and Research here. So again, there's going to be some automation, some math and stats modeling. It's kind of a startup. It's exciting. It's going to be, I also mentioned this too. It's also going to be remote full-time, which I am just jazzed about because if you guys know from earlier episodes here, videos I talked about, one of the downsides between tech, FinTech, and banking is trying to weigh the commute time for me. And, tech was a fun 100% remote. FinTech was supposed to be a few days a week. And then banking would probably be in the office like 4 days a week. And trying to figure all that out and distance and locations and drives and all that. And remote full time, which I'm super excited about. Of course, I'll be running a team and everything. So I will be in the office though, because I truly believe that there are things like I just can't teach that well when I'm not there. So I'll be, in the office, obviously, sometime. And I'll be wanting to get my hands, dirty here and really teach things and, grow people, grow employees. And more importantly, solve really fun and interesting problems. And that was, I think, one of the big drivers as well is, I've kind of been ground down for a few years here. I'm just kind of tired of working out. And it's like, yeah, I'm making more and more money and I'm getting pushed up through management. And I'm actually losing a lot of my quant skills because we're just into high positions where it's like you're just managing more and more people. And yet as I talk to this FinTech firm, they're like, well, we have this problem and this problem and this problem. We need to solve this and we need to do this. And we have all these issues. And like, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh, okay. Like this is like, I'm thinking in my head, like I've seen this sort of model. It could be applied to this and this, and we could solve this problem this way. And then I left the interviews at home and I sat and thought about it. And I was like, oh, and we could do this. And there's this other idea. Maybe we could solve this problem with this. And like, I'm starting to like get excited again, where it's like when I was at the heights of a lot of my career, I was always just thinking about these things. Like I've mentioned in some of the past videos, I have like a time series problem. And it's like I wake up at like 3 a.m. and it's like, that's it. Like I know how to solve this. This is probably the variable. And then if I structure it in this such a way, it'll become stationary. And then I can plug this in with the seasonal component. And like, I got it. And I just remember it. And then I go back to bed and everything. But it's like my brain is constantly going. And it's like, I want to be involved in this. I want to be back in the quant mentality here and the excitement around it. And yet over the years, it's just become like, Dimitri, just sit down and shut up and just do the basic modeling. Like, don't ask questions. Don't make things better. Like, we just need to get through the day. And this FinTech is really kind of sparking a new excitement in me where it's like, I'm really excited to be there. I'm excited to be around the people. They seem like good people. And they have interesting problems to solve, which for me is the most important aspect in a job. Like, I want to be somewhere where I'm actually solving problems. I'm adding value, right? I'm not the type of person that wants to say, okay, I'm filling a seat. Like, it sounds like at that bank, I would just be filling a seat. Like, they just need someone to kind of toe the company chain here, fill a few responsibilities, do some basic business as usual and move on. I'm not looking to do that. I want something that's like, you need me to solve these problems. And I want to be there because I need to solve these sort of problems to stay mentally stimulated. So I think it's going to be a great fit joining FinTech here. I won't talk too much about this. I won't release any of the company information there just because, as my typical policy, I try to keep my actual work life separated from my podcast and my YouTube channels, which is hard to do, but I keep them actually fairly separated and don't leak anything from one to the other. But anyways, that's my Talking Tuesday. I'm going into FinTech. I'm about to sign the final contract here today or tomorrow. I'll send all that paperwork over. It'll be official. I will start in July, so I'm still working on the garage build. It is grinding me out. I'm physically tired and just burnt out from doing that because I'm laying over 8,000 brick and then doing, I don't know, a few hundred square feet of stone and putting all that in. So real natural stone. Anyways, that's Talking Tuesdays. That's where I'm headed. I'm really excited to be joining a new firm and getting back to the industry here as well. Do a little bit more exciting things. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And as always, until next time.